Before I begin though, I just want to put it out in terms of if you are at all interested in solving problems, particularly if there are issues surrounding you today that is in the technology area that you feel need to be changed or would like to be involved in making a change, engineering and technology is a field for you. I like to include this quote, "My engineering education challenged me to reach for the stars, and one day I found myself standing on the moon." That was a commander of the Apollo 17 landing, and he was an engineer, and it shows that the training and the thinking of engineers can take you even to the stars. IEEE is one of the organizations that engineers are part of, and they've identified on this slide a number of different areas where you could be studying. Basically, if you have an interest in almost any field and would like to solve problems in any area, there's likely an engineer working in that area as well. If you like to work with computers, there's computer engineering. If you like to create artificial limbs for people, there's biomedical engineering. If you like to work with electronics and electrical devices, there's electrical engineering. If you like to build buildings or bridges, there's civil engineering. And if you like to deal with robotics, there's mechanical engineering. And of course, if you want to deal with environmental issues, there's environmental engineering. So there's a large number of different areas that you can focus your attention on, but at the core is engineering as a foundation. So why VIU? First, at VIU, we are very focused on providing experiential education for our students. We do cooperative opportunities for students. These are opportunities for students to study and work in industry directly with engineers in the field, doing real projects at real times and getting paid for it. And I have some of the opportunities and companies on the screen in front of you. We also ensure that students get out and do a bunch of activities, and some of these are shown here. We take students on tours. In this case, the one on the top is a Triumph, which is a subatomic accelerator. We brought students there to check it out. We also brought them down to the Boeing plant in Washington State, and this is a jet engine that they were taking a look at. At the bottom two slides are an experience we recently had with students, and this was a field school, an international field school experience, where a number of the students went over to Vietnam and worked in a rural post-secondary and trying to bring in electrical wiring and so on into the villages that are surrounding it. It was a great experience. They worked with those students at that school directly and learned from each other quite a bit, and how practice of engineering is fairly consistent at both institutions. Other things we do is every year we do a design project, and celebration is a big key for that. You can see some of the pictures of the students and their projects in front of you. All students also get a little lapel pin to identify themselves as being part of the cohort, part of the program, and that's shown there too. We also make sure that we make use of the most advanced prototyping tools, and so we use 3D printers and laser etchers to get students very familiar with the tools that they're going to see in industry when they exit to it. I do want to point out that it's also important to play as well, and we get good support from the local engineering association, who in this case provide Lego and blocks and so on for students to work with during their study periods, so that although studying is one thing, but it's also important to take a bit of a break as well, and so that's been there and provided to you. You also, as part of this program, get access to dedicated project spaces. These are open areas that only you can use. You have card access to access these spaces at almost any time of the day. Use the equipment that's available to you and the space for studying or working with your peers or whatever you end up wanting to do. The space, one of the spaces is shown in the slides. This is actually after one of their projects, so it's a little messy and will be cleaned up, but this is the freedom that you have if you're at the school such as ours. So a little bit about some of the programs, the two programs particularly that we offer at Vancouver Island University. The first is for students who are looking to transfer on and complete their engineering degree. These students start coming in as the engineering transfer diploma. They stay at VIU for 2 years. They fully complete 20 courses that transfer to the University of Victoria. We provide guaranteed seats for students in all those courses, and your access to that program is based on your GPA. You also have an option to do a co-op program during your first summer break. Or if you choose, you can exit after 1 year, and that increases your transfer options. You can either go to University of British Columbia or Simon Fraser University or University of Northern BC or even the University of Alberta after that 1 year of study. This is a great opportunity to introduce you to engineering. It's a great opportunity to introduce you to industry, and in these smaller class sizes your learning potential is increased immensely before you move on to these larger schools to complete your engineering studies. Another option we offer is a Technologist program. This is a shorter program. Instead of 4 years like what an engineering degree might be, a technology program is more like 2 to 2.5 years, and it's much more practically focused. At the Integrated Engineering Technologist Diploma at VIU, we are intending for students to have a very strong practical skill set in the skills and necessary in industry today. Specifically, we're exposing students to industry-standing software, prototyping tools, where you will learn to collaborate and design and model and draft in many disciplines, and particularly in those of construction, mining, or manufacturing, or civil design. For this program, co-op is a mandatory component, and you're going to be doing a lot of projects where you're going to be working with and in industry to complete real goals. You're going to include a big capstone project at the end where you'll be working in civil design or machining tools or project management and making yourself skill ready and job ready for when you graduate. So you might ask, why engineering or why engineering technology? What is the difference? In general, if you're interested in pursuing an engineering degree, you're going to be focused more on theory and more on design. You're going to have less hands-on activities, and you're going to be doing multiple semesters in academic areas like calculus or calculus-based science courses. But engineering will lead to licensing as a professional engineer, and you need that license in order to practice engineering. An engineering technologist is focused more so on the application and the implementation of design. They have less direction in terms of the academics, in terms of calculus and statistics and so on, and it's far more practical and theoretical in nature. It does lead to a licensing as professional technologist, but at this point it's not necessary that you have that license to practice. Here's just a little illustration as to how these two types of degrees fit with each other. We have engineering versus engineering technology or technologists. And you can see from the graph that the engineering education brings far more into the design and theoretical research, where the technologist is focused more on the practical, the building, and the production of designs. A little bit about how it works here at Vancouver Island University. First, we have a philosophy of providing access and flexibility to students no matter what degree pathway they decide to take. And regardless of whether you're interested in the Technologist program or the engineering program, you will start in the same first year together. You'll in fact be working with engineers or technologists no matter what pathway you actually end up choosing. That's important because if you complete that first year and you decide that you, instead of doing engineering, you want to do a technologist pathway, you are able to transfer after that year into the technologist pathway. Or if you're in the technologist pathway and you want to continue into an engineering degree instead, you can transfer into that as well. Further, if you are doing the engineering transfer pathway and you decide that you would prefer, instead of going to University of Victoria as an end path for your engineering degree, you want to go to one of these other schools in British Columbia, you just have to advise the advising admissions department, and they will add 2 more courses to your first year, and you'll be able to transfer with a certificate after 1 year into University of Victoria, University of British Columbia, Thompson Rivers University, or Simon Fraser University. There's many options and much flexibility for you, and it's not expected that you're going to know exactly what you want to do when you start. And so that first year, that core first year, provides a good foundation to give you an understanding as to which pathway is best for you. I'm not going to talk about this slide so much except to say that we are very much into working with our transfer partners to facilitate your ease of getting into those institutions after the 1 or 2 years. And in many of those cases, those arrangements are guaranteed entry usually into second year, and a lot of the details is worked out, and we are sharing this information often with our students during their course of the first year. So what do you need to get in? For both the technologist and the engineering pathway, because they have the shared first year, they both share the same minimum requirements for entry. And that is a grade 12 equivalent of grade math 12 with a B or a higher, chemistry 12 with a C plus or higher, physics 12 with a C plus or higher, and English with a B or higher. And these are prerequisites for the first term courses in your programs. It would also be helpful, but it's not required, that you have some programming or calculus in your background. But if you don't have the chemistry 12 or you don't have the physics 12, you certainly should still look to apply, and in those cases, based on your other grades, you may be admitted on a case-by-case basis. 0.5 and TOEFL score of 88 with no section less than 20. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to introduce Kara Blackman, who's here from the Admissions Office at International, who can be far more specific about some of those questions than I might be able to. We have a question asking, what is the tuition? And I think I'm going to ask Karen to answer that one.
Okay, well, first of all, what we usually do is require international students to provide us with 1 semester's worth of fees before we give them a letter of acceptance, and that would be for 7 credits, or sorry, 17 credits is for the first semester, and so the initial payment that you would have to make is $10,256.48. And then we also would require that you pay for your medical expenses, your medical insurances, which is another $524.50. So that's for the initial payment. For the full year, it would be basically double that. So it's give or take about $23,000 for the year.
Another question is the co-op paid or unpaid? And for co-op positions, they are always paid. Not usually at an extremely high rate for those first few, but they are a paid position, so yes.
And I'm just going to add to that if you do the co-ops, that you would require to get a work permit when you apply for your study permit, and we would indicate on your letter of acceptance that you will be doing a co-op, but you'll want to probably flag that to your immigration officer at the time as well, so they don't miss that and you get your work permit right away at the time that you're applying for your study permit.
Another question is, what is the IELTS or TOEFL score? And for entry into VIU, the IELTS score is a 6.5 with no band less than a 6, or a TOEFL of 88 and no section below 20. I have another question. What kind of job can I get after the Technologist Diploma? Technologist Diplomas, there's actually 3 rungs of technology practice in terms of jobs. One is a technician, which usually involves a 1-year certificate and is far more practical. You basically are a building position usually. And you have the engineering position, which are in the design space. As a technologist, at most firms, you're going to be doing a little bit of design and you're going to be doing a little bit of building and usually communicating between those two groups. So in terms of your types of job, many technologists are doing computer-aided drafting and doing some small designs in terms of buildings and build bridges and so on. Or you might be doing some small circuit designs, and then if you're doing in the electronics sphere and so on. So most firms have engineers on staff, technologists on staff, and sometimes technicians as well. And particularly consulting engineering firms want a broad swath of backgrounds of their employees to cover all of these skills. Another question that we have is, are there any scholarships for international students? And I'm going to pass this on to Karen to answer.
Yeah, I can answer that. We do have a variety of scholarships available. Generally what happens is when you apply, the admissions officer will look at your grades, and if you have particularly high grades from your high school years, from your last year of high school, we'll flag you for or we'll nominate you for a scholarship. If you go to our website at www.viu.ca and to the international student section, there is an area there where you can see a breakdown of all the different scholarships that we offer. They range from about $1,000 to about $3,000. Some we give to IB students, some we give to students with high grades, some we give to students who went to school at a BC high school, but there is quite a range of different scholarships based on your grades, GPA.
Another question asks, how many jobs are there on the island for engineers, or are there more in Vancouver and other regions? Vancouver Island has about 750,000 people in it, and Vancouver is pushing about 2.5 million. So in terms of the engineering positions, there's proportionally as many engineering positions on Vancouver Island as there would be in Vancouver. So certainly there is a lot of demand, particularly in civil, mechanical, and electrical engineering or technology areas. I have another question. I have a student who graduated from Dover Bay, IELTS of 6.5. Can he study some engineering courses at VIU over the summer session and then continue to the University of Alberta? In general, we don't offer engineering courses over the summer term. Many of the schools have a restriction. You have to complete a certain number of courses over a certain time frame in order to qualify for entry into their programs after transfer. And in terms of transfer to the University of Alberta, we don't have a formal agreement with the University of Alberta for students who transfer there. We have many students who have transferred there, but on an informal basis. The formal agreements that we do have are usually captured those schools that are in the province of British Columbia. But students have successfully transferred to the University of Alberta in the past.
And I just want to add to that. Again, the IELTS, the 6.5, it's not just whether you have a 6.5 overall, it's whether you have a 6.5 with no band under 6. If you're going to Dover Bay, you will probably have an English score from grade 12, as long as it's not English communications. And so we could look at that grade, and if that's a C+ and over for grade 12 English, that would give you the English requirement. However, the question is, would you go into the engineering program? There's a lot more that we look at than just whether you graduated and whether you have an English grade. As Brian said, we would need to look at whether you've got the science and maths that are required for the program as well, and what your GPA is overall for those courses.
Yes, there is at least, if not more, technologists in the province as there are engineers, and many engineering firms will have not just engineers on staff but also technologists on staff as well. And that's because usually they're doing slightly different job scopes during their positions. So there certainly are job opportunities in BC and growing job opportunities in BC with the demographic trends that we're seeing. I have a question, what's the accommodation options at VIU? And again, I think I'll pass that.
We don't actually have a residence person here, but we do try to assist international students as best we can with getting residents in Nanaimo. We do homestay programs where you can stay with a family, a Canadian Nanaimo family. There is a student residence on campus. You can also rent your own accommodation if you want, and we do have a service to help international students find their own accommodation, private accommodation. So there's quite a few options available to you, and you can contact our homestay or our homestay department at, I think it's homestay@viu.ca. And also, if you go online and look at our different residency options, you can find that online on the international website pages.
I have another question. Is there a limited number of seats available for international students? And there are seats available for international students, and there are a set number of seats. It's a limited entry program for all students, actually. And a proportion of those are set aside for international students, but there is a limited number of seats available, yes. Another question relates to services available for international students, specifically advising or counseling services.
Yes, okay, so we have in-house within the international education faculty here, we have in-house advisors. Some of these advisors provide counseling services as well, and some of the advisors provide immigration advice. They're qualified to do so. So there are a lot of support services available to international students here.
I have another question related to the average salary rate for a recent graduate with the Technologist Diploma. And just to put a little bit of aside, there is going to be some variation in terms of salaries, but I would guess that in most cases your salaries coming out would be on the order of around $50,000 or more a year. A question is, if a student has started a certificate or diploma program at a BC college, can they transfer into engineering and get credit for their previous studies? I would say that for engineering pathway, because of our agreements with our receiving schools, most of those students will end up transferring directly to those receiving schools to complete their engineering degree. However, for the Technologist program, there is a common first-year engineering curriculum across the whole province, and our Technologist program has been based upon that. So students starting their studies at another college or post-secondary institution in BC and completing their first year will be able to transfer into second year of the Technologist program without any challenges. There's a question around how about future jobs, and I'm going to read that as to what are the job prospects going forward. There's certainly a need in the province of British Columbia and Canada as a whole for both engineers and technologists in the field. And this is mostly due to demographics, people retiring and leaving the workforce, and the need for people to enter the workforce to replace them. In addition, there's a lot of new opportunities that are available as well. So in terms of job markets, technologists and the engineering job growth seems very strong going forward. Certainly, if you had interest in how the students interact and so on during the program, as a student in the program, you are taking classes with all the other students and all the other courses at the same time. You're essentially all going through this as a team. Our students learn a lot about each other, and they learn a lot about everybody's background and use that towards achieving their own goals. They're very much approaching it like a team, and that's one of the benefits that we offer here at Vancouver Island University. I have a question around, if I have not taken math or physics at grade 12, what are my options to study engineering at VIU? There's two parts to this question. If you are lacking Physics 12, and depending on how your grades are in your other courses, there is a possibility that we would admit you into the engineering program at VIU on a case-by-case basis. So if you are lacking Physics 12, I would recommend that you apply, and we would evaluate you based on what you present.
Would you need to have Physics 11 for that?
Yes, you would need to have Physics 11, yes, that's a good point. If you are lacking Math 12, on the other hand, it would probably be best that you would come to VIU perhaps the term or two before and work through either the International High School or programs that are available in the Faculty of International Education to upgrade your skills prior to entry into the engineering certificate, and that's to mostly for your opportunity for success in those programs.
And in that case, you would have to keep in mind as well that as an international student, you need to be a full-time student. So there are opportunities to take our adult basic education courses to upgrade, that you would be doing the equivalent of a grade 11 or 12 or whatever it is that you need. But you would have to be in full-time studies. So we'd have to look at how many hours you're taking, and you may need to do some extra courses on top of the one or two courses that you may need to upgrade on just to maintain that full-time status.
Well, thank you all for your attention, and we both look forward to seeing you here at Vancouver Island University potentially in the future. So thank you for your questions, and feel free to send further along if you have them.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.